Part 2, and again apologies, the video camera I use has a 30-minute time limit, meaning it just automatically shuts itself off if I ramble on for 30 minutes or more. So I've got a few more things I want to add, and making this part 2 video as an addendum. Okay, continuing with my list of things that made no sense. Now I'm going to talk about plot details here, so not only are there spoilers, but some of this isn't going to make sense if you haven't read the book. But if you have read the book, here are some things. A whole lot of stuff with the Chatwin children just made no sense. Quentin is repeatedly being described as being obsessed with Fillory books. He even seems aware of some of the scholarly research on these books. And yet it comes as a surprise to him when Alice reveals that the Chatwin children who figure in the Fillory books are based on real-life Chatwin children who lived near the Fillory books author, Christopher Plummer. You would think that this would have been one of the first things a real fan would discover. Also, the real-life Chatwin child, Martin Chatwin, disappears in real life, just as the Martin Chatwin character in the Fillory books does. You'd think this would be bigger news, right? And you'd think this would be something that any fan of the book would have known. Then at the end of the book, we find out that Christopher Plummer had been sexually abusing Martin Chatwin. It turns out that this is the reason why Martin Chatwin had been trying to hide in the clock to begin with. And yet, Christopher Plummer was also the person the Chatwin children went to in order to confide their Fillory adventures to. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, another thing here. There's an interview with Grossman that was on the AV Club. And they asked him the question. They said, "At first glance, The Magicians could be seen as a total ironic look at fantasy. And then, some of your characters reference things like Harry Potter and Oz by name. Did you have any internal debate about including those references?" Lev Grossman answers, "Oh yeah, I even had external debates about it. But here's what I've always thought. It's very weird that Harry Potter isn't a fantasy reader. Here he is, growing up in a closet, surrounded by an abusive stepfamily. I think he'd be obsessed with and read everything about fantasy. I did, and I didn't even have an abusive stepfamily. When he gets to Hogwarts, it's as if he's never read a fantasy novel in his life. It's obviously something that J.K. Rowling opted out of and chose not to deal with. But I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if everyone who goes to my school had spent their whole life playing Gauntlet and Dungeons and Dragons and reading Narnia and Harry Potter? They would see everything through that lens and compare everything to what they've read about in the books. I wasn't making a big metafictional point. I just think that's how it would happen. And I wanted to cue people that Harry Potter was part of this universe, yet I didn't want to get super overbearing about it. I also didn't want to get into an intellectual property lawsuit. There's just a couple winky-wink moments that hopefully aren't too cute. There was a lot of debate within myself and with other people about how far to go with that. I didn't want to seem like I was making fun of Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. I just felt that my characters would make fun of Harry Potter." Oh, okay, apologies for that extended quotation. I just wanted to mention that because Lev Grossman has addressed this, and I wanted to show his defense of what he's doing there. And I get it. I get what he's saying, but the problem is he's got a classic all or nothing problem here. Either his characters are aware of Harry Potter, or his characters are not aware of Harry Potter. Now, he does have a couple references to Harry Potter in this book, which indicates that, yes, the Harry Potter series does exist in this universe, and his characters are familiar with it. Once we've opened that door, then it really doesn't make sense that they're not talking about Harry Potter all the time, because everything that happens to them is so similar to Harry Potter. So really, throughout the whole book, they should constantly be saying, wow, this is just like in those Harry Potter books. If they're at all familiar with the Harry Potter books, which apparently they are. And again, I understand why Lev Grossman doesn't want to do that, because that could get super old really quickly. But at the same time, it's just strange. It just feels strange that his characters aren't referencing everything back to Harry Potter when so much of what was in Harry Potter is happening to them. Okay, more complaints about the plot. So I don't get what the deal was with all those magical creatures they had to fight until they got to Ember. Were they all on Martin's side? The reveal at the end is Martin had conducted this elaborate plan to lure the magicians into Ember's prison and then defeat them. And that was why Dent and Fable helped him lure the magicians there. I guess, I'm thinking, but why Ember's prison? And if it was Martin's plan to encounter the magicians in Ember's prison, why did his creatures fight so hard to keep them away? Did that mean that Dent this whole time was fighting and killing the creatures on his own side just for the sake of the ruse? Now, at the end, we find out that Dent was working for Martin the whole time. But Finn wasn't, I guess, because the characters still all continued to refer to her death as a tragedy. So how do we know that she wasn't working for Martin like Dent was? And if she wasn't, then what was her game this whole time? She must have known she was leading them to Ember's prison, right? And the river nymph, what was the deal with her? Was that ever explained? Whose side was she on? Okay, just a couple more things I'm going to complain about. Time in Fillory apparently works just like it does in Narnia. No matter how little or how long you spend in Fillory, whenever you leave, you're back in the real world, as if no time at all had passed. And when you're in the real world, you have no idea how much time is passing in Fillory. The book went to considerable effort to make this very clear. But then after all that, the ending of the book is totally inconsistent. I mean, what's the deal with that? How come when Quentin finally exits from Fillory, time had passed in the real world? I thought we went through all that setup to emphasize that time wasn't passing in the real world. Also, one more thing. What was that dead guy at the beginning of the book? Why was he dead? What had happened to it? I thought they were setting up some sort of mystery, and then that never got explained. Did I miss something? There's actually a lot more what I perceive to be plot holes and inconsistencies. But I'm going to finish here because I think I've spent more than enough time and energy reviewing this little book. Just I maybe guess to reiterate, there are a lot of people who really love this book. So don't let my opinion dissuade you from checking it out if you're at all curious. And if you have checked it out, or if you do check it out, then let me know what you think. Am I right? Am I missing something? Were these actually plot holes? Am I being too harsh? Let me know what you think.